Now we are going to the next session for the workshop, which will lead by Dr. Ouidad Infi and Dr. Ghizlan Alaoui, with the title is Bridging Language, Knowledge, and Action in Climate and Environmental Research. First of all, I would like to introduce both our speakers. For the first one is Dr. Ouidad Infi is an assistant professor at Moulay Ismail University, where she teaches English at the Faculty of Science. She holds a PhD in applied linguistics and a master's degree in biology, specializing in medicinal aromatic plants. Her work spans educational change, educational program evaluation, eco-linguistics, and environmental education. And for the second speaker, is Dr. Ghizlan Alaoui is a professor of linguistics in the English department at the Faculty of Letters and Human Sciences at Moulay Ismail University in Morocco. She holds a PhD in news discourse. She's an active member of the Applied Linguistics and Artificial Intelligence Research Laboratory. She currently serves as the coordinator of the MUN Club. Her academic interests include applied linguistics, critical discourse analysis, communication, and media studies. Dr. Alaoui has authored several publications on topics such as new discourse, social media discourse, ecolinguistics, and the use of AI in education. So for making short time, then I will give the time to our speakers.
Good morning, everyone, again. It's a pleasure again to be here with you. So we just wanted to share with you a small, tiny research, interdisciplinary research we conducted in our university. So the title of the presentation of the workshop is Bridging Language, Knowledge, and Action in Climate and Environmental Research. This way?
Much.
Okay, so how do I move
here?
Yeah. Okay. So, in fact, before joining university, I worked for 15 years as a teacher of science, a teacher of biology, and it was always puzzling me. Like we wanted to sensitize students to environmental issues, but we felt that it never worked. Like whatever you do, they don't care. You don't see like any change in behavior, and it was always puzzling me. Like why? We invited students to do presentations. We provided like shocking statistics about environments and so on, but we felt that nothing worked. And so this was always bothering me as a teacher of science. Until we, in around 2020, we were introduced to ecolinguistics by our supervisor. And so at first we were like, what's this ecolinguistics? What connection might be there between language and ecology? And I was very interested about the topic. And we decided to work, like we said, we read a book we're gonna talk to you about later, and then we're gonna try to work on this and try to figure out what ecolinguistics can tell us about ecology. So, oops, I think there is a problem with the order. Excuse me a second. Yeah, so the research questions then that we had in mind at first is why environmental education in science classes was not effective, and then how can we make it more effective? Go back to methodology. So we decided to work on science textbooks. We tried also to investigate students' understandings and also teacher practices and beliefs and so on. And we worked on content analysis. We analyzed samples from textbooks, and we also used questionnaires and interviews with teachers. because environmental education happens, well, in our case, in a science classroom, so we had to understand the issue from an ecology perspective, from an educational perspective, and also from a language perspective. So we had at least 3 disciplines, if you want, that we needed to work on. And also, I think I brought the practitioner's perspective, as I was myself a teacher of science. So from the ecological perspective, we collaborated also with a professor in science didactics, and his job was to find out whether the ecological content of textbook was right. I mean, in terms of content, sequence, presentation of concepts, and so on. From an educational perspective, so although none of us is specialists in environmental education, but we did readings, and we found out that in our practice we follow the old model, traditional model, which is what we have in mind, that once we present students with knowledge about environmental issues, this is going to develop awareness and immediately attitudes and care about environment, which is going to lead to action. So we had the assumption that once you present students with knowledge, it's going to get to action, which turned out, of course, to be not true. So most recent models on environmental education defined the purpose of environmental education as if one produces an ecologically literate citizen, that's someone who can, who owns the knowledge necessary to understand the interrelatedness and complexity of environmental issues and attitude of care, and most importantly, some practical competence. The purpose is to act on the basis of knowledge and feeling towards achieving and maintaining a dynamic equilibrium between quality of life and quality of environment. So, according then to this vision of environmental education, students needed to develop in-depth understanding, and here it's like they have to develop this interrelatedness of understanding issues. Ethical competence, that is the ability to reflect critically on their own values, and of course, practical competence, skills to act on those values and knowledge. So from an environmental perspective, normally what we did as practitioners, we talked about environmental issues in the classroom, and when students went to social science classroom, usually it's another talk. We talk about economics and development and other stories. When they come to the science classroom, the talk is that we need to protect the environment and so on. And values is probably in a religious classroom or something. So students couldn't make the connection between these 3 dimensions. So, and usually in the traditional way of teaching environmental education, we framed environmental problems or issues as problems, which means they're plain, they're one-dimensional, they just needed technical solutions. So the outcome of all the exercises would be either recommendation for more recycling, more use of renewable energies, and so on. While, in fact, if we want students to develop the kinds of understanding and value that they need to develop the interrelated understandings, we need to frame environmental issues as issues. Means we have to involve the dimensional the value dimension, like students need to understand that different stakeholders have different values, and then we have to connect this and try to understand different perspectives. So this is very, very important, framing issues as issues, not as complex issues, not as simple problems. And the third dimension was the eco-linguistic dimension, and my colleague is going to talk about this dimension.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. So I'll, in fact, briefly talk about how the discipline of linguistics can contribute to a better understanding of narratives written about ecology. In fact, language is a powerful toolkit. So how is that? So language provides its users, speakers, with plenty of options to choose from. So we can have different grammatical structures to say the same thing. We can use different vocabulary words. Again, we can also use different figures of speech, metaphors, personifications, similes, and so on. And but the notion of choice, the notion of choice of specific linguistic features and not others is very important. Why? Because authors, they select and they choose certain expressions to serve certain interests. So certain linguistic features can highlight certain things and dim and obscure other things. So thank you very much. So we were talking about the notion of choice of specific linguistic features over others is very significant, as authors can use, strategically and construct on purpose certain language, yes, to highlight certain notions and dim and obscure others. And here we have the cover of a book by Aaron Stibbe. He is one of the pioneers of ecolinguistics. His book, Ecolinguistics, Language Ecology, and the Stories We Live By. So in his book, he stresses the idea that many everyday stories found in news, advertising, and media are not just harmless narratives, but they are lies that we live by. These stories we live by, they normalize and they legitimize environmental destruction and harmful ideologies. So in this book, Stibbe warns that language is never innocent, language is never neutral. Instead, it often carries hidden values and assumptions that can shape how we think and behave. So here we have some examples that that authors can use to manipulate language. So in terms of grammar, so of course, we can, for example, use the passivization technique. Okay, we can use the passive voice instead of the active voice to hide agency. So for instance, toxic waste was dumped into the river. So who did the action? It is not mentioned. Instead of saying corporations, and here the speaker or the author is highlighting the doer of the action. Another technique is nominalization, using nouns. And here again, to hide agency and to turn actions into abstract nouns. For example, the exploitation of natural resources continues. So who does it again? Instead of saying companies exploit. And another technique is the impersonal structures. Again, minimizing responsibility. It was argued, it was said, again, try to hide agency and responsibility. Other linguistic options we can use again to manipulate narrative discourse is the use of lexical or vocabulary options. So authors can use euphemism again as a technique to soften the harsh and the shocking effects of certain words. For example, the examples we have here, we are investing in green economy versus we are invested in environmentally branded industries. So the example green economy, of course, softens and disguises the continuous exploitation and the sustainable label that sounds eco-friendly. Another technique is pairing, so combining two words or words combination to create some misleading impressions. So here we have the example of growth with sustainable makes it seem harmless or even beneficial. Or also the use of metaphors also again to turn or destructive behavior into something purposeful and rewarding. So being aware of the power of language, we can develop some critical thinking skills to uncover and detect hidden ideologies that can really manipulate our view of the world. And this is how language is powerful. Yes. No? Thank you.
So why, again, just a short conclusion. Why this is important? Why language is important? It's important because it shapes how the types or the knowledge we develop, the beliefs we develop, the values we develop. And the most interesting thing is that most of what we learn is tacit. We're not aware of it. And because we're exposed to that language, so that's, unless we have the critical ability to rethink what we're exposed to as language, we just develop beliefs and values without being aware of that. And so the study we conducted showed that the textbooks we had were ecologically okay, right? I mean, they had the ecological content that allowed students to develop concepts. Like, for example, when we asked students, they all came up with the right definition of what an ecosystem is. But from an education or environmental education perspective, students were not able to have developed this in-depth understanding of issues. Like when we ask students, what would you do to protect the environment? Usually the answer is very simplistic. It's not wasting water, it's throwing trash where it should be thrown, and that's it. And they were not able to make the connection between any consumption behavior they did every day and the impact this can have on the environment. This was not visible for students because of the kind of activities we had in the classroom. And and coming to this course, and probably in students or educational textbooks, probably the use of distracted language was not deliberate, but still we had ambivalent language. And on one side you have calls for protecting the environment, but at the same time we're in the textbook using very distracted language. So there are two probably thoughts we want to share with you today. First one, what we learned from this research is that we should never undermine any discipline. Like before being introduced to eco-linguistics, and I think this happened to all of us as researchers at one time, you just tell yourself, well, what? This discipline has to do with civil engineering or informatics. It's not true. Sometimes you can have very, very enlightening insights from a discipline that you never expected to be that informative. And mid-sensorial insight number 2, Right after finishing this study, we were able to turn the results into a workshop for science teachers, my colleagues and other colleagues. So we did a workshop on how they have to bring textbooks, and we took activities from textbook. We did a presentation on eco-linguistics and environmental education, and we worked together to change those plain classical activities into more interesting activities in terms of environmental education. And so what I wanted to share with you today is that we will never forget the spark we saw in the eyes of teachers when they yes, this is how we could make it better. And it's true that as researchers, when we get an article published or something, we feel very thrilled, very satisfied, but I think I've never felt as fulfilled as that day when you feel that you had an impact on a real world issue. So the more interdisciplinary your research is, the closer the distance between outcome of research, output of your research and outcome or impact on real world. So thank you very much for your attention.